Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Inspiritus volunteer orientation here in Atlanta. My name is Jenny, and my role here is the community engagement specialist. This means that I work with volunteers and our community partners. So, thank you for coming and welcome. A little bit about Inspiritus and our mission statement. This is important because I will refer back to this repeatedly throughout this presentation. Our motto here is to walk alongside our clients from surviving to thriving. So there are different parts to that. The beginning is basic needs, which leads to stability and safety. Then community integration with community resources and our volunteers. And then eventually self-sufficiency. A little bit about our different programs here. We work in the Refugee and Immigrant Services Department. So we're working with different people from all over the world. We also have our Children and Family Services program, our Disability Service program, and our Disaster Response team, which kind of operates all over the Southeast. Just a bit of background. Who is a refugee? This is somebody who has fled their home country and is currently residing in a neighboring country, typically in a refugee camp. So this is someone who has fled their home and cannot return for one of the following reasons. That's race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. So it could be one or all of these reasons. We also work with different types of people with different legal classifications. We have an asylum seeker, which is somebody who has fled their home country and is currently at the U.S. Border pleading for asylum. And then we also work with people who have humanitarian parolee status. These are people who are typically fleeing from a very emergent situation. For example, this happened recently in Ukraine when Russia took over or invaded, I'm sorry. And before that, it happened in Afghanistan with the Taliban taking over. So this is a temporary status. Once they arrive here to the United States, they are also having to find a legal pathway to remain here in the United States. Thankfully, here at Inspiritus, we have our immigration team that has been working very, very hard in making sure any Afghan humanitarian parolee client um, who can qualify for asylum has applied for that. So we are seeing the end result of all that work. Recently, we have had a couple of asylum applications approved, which is great news. So just a little bit of background on who an asylum seeker and a humanitarian parolee client is. There are also different legal classifications, like internally displaced people. So this is somebody who has not crossed the border yet to find safety. So a lot of times this could be the beginning stages of this whole refugee process, right? We also there are also people who um, are stateless people. This means that they do not have a nationality and can often struggle to access basic human rights. This happens a lot with Indigenous people. Here at Inspiritus, we specifically work with refugees and asylees. I'll go into the definition more about refugees in a bit, but an asylee is somebody who has already been through that whole asylum process. So they are no longer an asylum seeker. They have been given they've been given the access of having official asylee status. So that means they've been through the whole immigration court system and have been granted asylum. We also work with immigrants and migrants impacted by detention. We have recently um, started with a program called Team Libertad. This means Team Freedom, and it's a completely volunteer run program that we have. What people do in that program is that they help accompany the travelers that are arriving at the Atlanta airport from Stewart Detention Center. So Stewart Detention Center is a immigration detention center in South Georgia, about 2 hours from here, and well, the Metro Atlanta area. And when people are released there, they are typically released without really knowing how to navigate the Atlanta airport. So our volunteers in that program help our travelers get to their final destination. We also work with unaccompanied immigrant children. So these are the children who are arriving at the border by themselves. So I'm pretty sure everyone was familiar with the news that was coming back, that was coming out back in 2019 or so. So with that, what we do here specifically is we do the home studying post-release part. So the whole beginning process of this is that once a child arrives at the border, they are pleading for asylum. Then they are turned over to an Office of Refugee Resettlement Shelter. And in that shelter, they are charged with finding a sponsor. This is somebody who can take care of this child until they turn 18. So our team steps in to do that home study to make sure the home is safe. And then once the child is released to that sponsor, we walk alongside them for about 3 months. So this is just to make sure that the client is receiving any of the free available community resources available to them. Just some general facts about the refugee crisis. I like to go over this just because to give you a little bit of a framework, a bigger picture, part of all of this work, there are about 27 million refugees in the world, and about half of them are children. So in 2021, close to half of all refugee children, 48% of them remain out of school. This is typically happening in the refugee camp. So another really important thing I want you to take away from this is that refugees may spend years and even decades living in these camps, and it is common to have entire generations growing up in the camps. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind. A big question, right? How do refugees get to Atlanta? It's a very lengthy response. So I will start with the refugee client leaving their home country and then with them being in the refugee camp. This is an opportunity for them to register with the UNHCR, which is kind of this global entity for refugee resettlement. From there, UNHCR refers a refugee to be considered for a resettlement in the United States. And so there are many different background checks, bio data, facial scans, interviews that go on here in this step. And from there, if it's approved, the US government gets involved with 8 different US government agencies doing all of these different checks as well. So they're being vetted at the global level and then extensively vetted with the US government. And if the client is approved, then the State Department gets and assigns the case to one of the 9 US NGOs, which I will talk about that in a bit too. And from there, Inspiritus can get involved in helping settle the client until they become economically self-sufficient. So this is a diagram talking about how everything moves down from the State Department and then to one of the NGOs. In this case, our NGO is Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, but there are also other NGOs like the IRC and the USCRI. what it looks like when a client is arriving to the United States. So we become aware, and our case managers are tasked with finding a suitable apartment. And so that's typically in Clarkson because there is a bunch of public transportation available to them and it's typically affordable. We also make sure that apartment is fully furnished. Thankfully, we now work with Welcome Co-op to help us with setting up those apartments. Our case managers also do the airport pickup, the hot meal as well. If there is a U.S. family member here, we will ask the family member if they would like to do the airport pickup or the hot meal. Our case managers also go through a very extensive safety orientation with them right upon their arrival. So that's making sure they know how to use the washer and dryer, how to turn on the stove. Of course, some of our clients already know how to do all of this. It's just different with the language. So we're just going through it just to be safe. Our case managers are also visiting the family within 24 hours upon their arrival as well. And within the first 30 days. So each client and each family has a service plan with many different needs. Our clients are going to cultural orientation classes. This is a class that's given by our staff to make sure that the client is aware of the different cultural um, values that we have here as well as laws. So it's very important that they attend these classes. We are also making sure they apply for food stamps, Medicaid, and refugee cash assistance. They're doing referrals for ESL at a local community college. Our case managers talk about public transit, but this is also a really big way where our volunteers can help out as well. And usually within the first 30 days, the child is enrolled in school. As you can see, they do a variety of different things within the first 30 days. So all of our clients are very busy at the beginning. And then within the first 6 to 8 months, things start to settle. This is more of the finding the stability and security and the community integration part of it all. So typically within these months, the client has found employment and is becoming economically self-sufficient. They're also more culturally adjusted here, and they also have the opportunity to connect to different community members, typically refugees. I've heard stories of people who were neighbors in home country becoming neighbors here in Clarkston. So just to give you a little bit more background on Clarkston, um, and it's also the most diverse square mile, by the way, in the United States. There's also this one-time grant that's given to every client, every refugee client. So this 90-day money covers any of the following um, necessities. So that includes a new mattress, the apartment rent, all the utility deposits, and a food allowance. The reason why there's a food allowance is because the food stamps application can sometimes take a while. So while that's coming in, part of it's for the food allowance. And another really big thing I also want to mention is that all the new mattresses can also be donated. So if they are donated, that means that money can be given back to the client. So that's one way donations make a real-time impact on our clients. This includes household items as well. Though if that's donated, that's not taking out of the client's 90-day money cover. We work with a bunch of different programs here within our Refugee and Immigrant Services Department. Our clients are very heavily involved with their resettlement case manager for the first 3 months. After the first 3 months, they have access to different programs and different services. Um, One of those being Match Grant Early Self-Sufficiency. This is a program that specializes in employment and gives financial incentives to our clients who can keep and maintain a job. So our even with the new arrival or resettlement case manager ending the services at 3 months, they still have access more than likely to their match grant case manager. They also have access to our social adjustment services and our employment services. So this is available to clients for up to 7 years after their arrival. What happens in this program is that they can either give employment referrals, or with the social adjustment services program, they can provide referrals for medical appointments or other needed services. Another really big program is our intensive case management program. So this is for clients who are seeing or who are struggling a bit more to adjust to life here in the United States. This is a year-long program. It's very intense. And what I've seen from this program is that this is typically for clients who have a medical condition or are single mothers. So it's a great program with great case managers who specialize in meeting the clients and walking alongside the clients to meet their goals. They also have access to our cultural orientation classes and our micro enterprise development program, which is this great new program that helps out our clients start a business if they're interested in that. We also have our trauma and resiliency youth programs. This typically operates outside in Clarkson High School. So it's working with high school age kids. We have our after school program and our summer camp. So, and some volunteer roles, right? A lot of times it's being that first friend, cultural mentor. And what do they do? So they do a variety of different things. They answer very general questions. This is typically questions about cultural values or community resources. They encourage morale. This is a really big one. Just having somebody be there for you in a country that you're not very familiar with. They provide cultural orientation and outings. So you can, if you're a first friend volunteer, feel free to take the client to the park, local park, and show them how to get there. You can take them to the local library, get them their library card, just introducing these different community resources to them. Another really big part of it is also promoting their English skills. The client will already be receiving ESL classes because they are referred to them, but a lot of times the role as a volunteer is learning that conversational English that's so important, not only for them to do well here in the United States, but specifically in their job as well. And just in general to be a friend during their transition and beginning of their life here in America. All of our volunteers agreed to do the following. We want all of our volunteers to support the goal of self-sufficiency. Like I said, I'm going to refer back to our mission statement, which is walking alongside our clients from surviving to thriving. A big, big part of that is supporting the goal of self-sufficiency. A lot of times it can be easy just to do something for a client, but it's always better to teach them how to do it themselves. Just because the volunteer role will end eventually, and it's unfair to you and it's unfair to the client to have that dependence be there. Another really big thing that we ask all our volunteers to do is to keep all client information confidential. So this is names, addresses, any identifying information. Please keep that all confidential. And just to be ready to transfer from a volunteer to a new neighbor or new friend. So explaining that to the client that this role will end and being prepared and transitioning into that role. We also ask that our volunteers do not spread their own religion to the client. This is very important because each of our refugee clients have fled their home and left everything behind for everything they believe in. So it's completely unfair and unacceptable to have a volunteer try to spread their religion to the client. We also do not take pictures or post pictures online of a client, their home, or the activities you're doing with them. So, what you always want to do in this situation is to always ask. Always ask them if it's okay to take the picture, first of all, and then to let them know where you want to post it if they are an adult. If they are children, then we absolutely do not allow that to happen. Um, we also ask that you abide by the boundaries, which I will talk about in a bit, and that each volunteer goes through a background check, and that each volunteer also checks in with me or the community engagement team to see how everything is progressing. We also ask that each volunteer record all of their interactions. This is just so that we also know what's going on. In developing cultural competency and sensitivity. This is more of the like how-tos in the reality of volunteering. So a big part of being a volunteer is explaining US culture. This can come in very simple ways. It's not as complicated as it may seem. A big part of it is discussing time boundaries. So with that, typically here in the United States, if we're receiving a call past 8 o'clock, we think it's pretty important and it's an emergency, whereas people from different cultures may see it as just calling in to check in on your day or to let you know something exciting happened to them. So, kind of explaining and setting those time and phone boundaries with the client is really important for their success here because this will also apply for their employment. Another really big thing is I've also seen personal hygiene come up. So with that situation, just explaining how to use the deodorant, what the deodorant is for. It's also in English, so they're probably not familiar on what it does. So just explaining different things to them, going to the grocery store. Is another big way to explain U.S. culture and our foods and how some items are perishable and which ones are not. So it's a really big part to kind of discuss all of this. And it's a big way that our volunteers are very helpful. So yeah, thank you. Some universal health precautions. This is, you might not think this could come up, but it could come up where you're being asked to change a diaper. Of course, you can't say no to that, but if you do want to, or you agree to do that, we ask that you always wear gloves whenever you come in contact with any blood or bodily fluids. We also recommend that you have latex gloves, hand sanitizer, and a couple of grocery bags. Just because sometimes when you're transporting a refugee client, it could be that they're not used to being in a car. So just in case, to have those bags available to them. And then also, to make sure, this is what I personally do, I don't move the car unless I know everyone in the car has their seatbelt on. This is just for safety purposes and also making sure they're understanding the laws here in the United States. And setting those appropriate boundaries, I mentioned it before, but it's very, very important to prevent burnout. So just being aware that it is okay to say no. because again, the goal is self-sufficiency, and although it might be easier sometimes for you to just do it or to take the client somewhere, it's always better to teach them how to access these resources on their own. And also don't feel like you're the only person they're asking. Our clients are very great self-advocates for themselves. You're probably one of many people they're asking. Don't feel like if you say no, there's no other way for the client to get what they need. Also, financial involvement. This is also super important. Our volunteers do not give money directly to clients, just because a big part of that is that it creates this unreliable um, resource, and it's unfair to you, and it's also unfair to the client. Because your involvement will eventually end. It's not sustainable for anybody to be giving clients money directly. And again, the goal is self-sufficiency. There are a bunch of community resources available. I want to say a bunch. I retract that. There are community resources available that they do have access to. And like I said, our clients have that 90-day money cover. And if they are enrolled in Match Grant, they are receiving financial incentives through that program. Another really big thing is teaching them public transit versus driving them. So this is just another way to, I mean, it's fine to say yes every now and again if you feel like there's a lack of public transportation going to a certain doctor's appointment, but I would also try and encourage you to walk through with them and using that public transit. So teaching them how to use it on their phone, what bus station it is, or what train station it is, and teaching them how to use all of that. And then also rumors. You might not think it could come up, but like I said, our clients are great self-advocates for themselves, and they will oftentimes tell you that a case manager hasn't set up their medical appointment yet. If that does happen, always encourage the client to directly talk to their case manager. That is the first step. So always encourage the client to reach out to the case manager if they have questions about that. If they're saying, well, the case manager isn't picking up, then in that case, what I would do is make sure the client knows that we work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and they could call or text the client on the case manager what is going on. So if that also is not a route that they have already taken, in that case, I would reach out to whoever community engagement is and ask them to reach out to the case manager. A lot of times when I've been put in this situation, the case manager is already working on the needed appointment. It's also come up in situations with the food stamps application or the Medicaid card that hasn't arrived yet in the mail. So that's typically outside of our control. The food stamps and Medicaid is operated by DFACS, and DFACS has to do the phone call to the client. So sometimes our clients can miss those phone calls, and then we have to do the whole application again. So there's always something that's going on, and I trust that our staff that I trust that our staff will make sure the client has all of their basic needs met. Just because our staff also is former they're also former refugees, so it's not just a job for them. So they also understand everything that's going on. It's just sometimes there's those extra obstacles that we do not have control over. And every single time that I reached out to a case manager about a certain situation with the client, there's always been an explanation. And then what the case manager typically does is reach out to the client directly and further clarifies it with them. and avoiding dependencies. We already kind of talked about this. It's kind of been the theme throughout this whole presentation, but we want to be careful with paternalism. Just because, like I said, our clients are great self-advocates. They know what's best for them. And I want you to approach this whole volunteer-client relationship with the idea that the client knows what's best. And if you say no to something, to not feel like it's the weight of the world is on you, the client will probably ask someone else or figure out how to do it on their own. So just avoiding all of those dependencies is really important to prevent burnout. Some tips for effective collaboration. We definitely work here in a team. You can see that with all of our different programs and all of the different case managers who specialize in different things here. So you saw that with our new arrival case managers, our social adjustment case managers, and our match grant case managers. But we also work in a team as volunteers, clients, and staff. A lot of times our volunteers can spend more time with our clients than our case managers do. So it's always good to keep that communication going and flowing. Another really big thing that we ask all our volunteers to do is to encourage the client to reach out to the case manager about anything super important. We don't want to be those middlemen essentially. So we ask our volunteers to encourage that relationship with that appropriate case manager, especially when it comes to depression, any concerns or any problems. And then also just being an advocate for Inspiritus. This could be as simple as talking to people about who a refugee is in the whole process and how it can be very, very complicated and take a very long time. So just letting people know about this is also super important um, in helping advocate for our clients. This could encourage other people to want to get involved, to either donate or to volunteer their time, which is always greatly appreciated. And the language barrier, because we are working with people from different, all over the world, this often comes up. And I want to assure you to not feel scared about it. It can be very awkward at first, but with time, I've seen very beautiful new neighbor relationship starts with this. So one thing to always keep in mind when navigating this is being very sensitive to using children to interpret. A lot of times a child is learns English faster than the parents because they're in school and they're just more exposed to it. I would, as a child, a first generation who knows both Spanish and English, I've been in situations where I shouldn't have been used as an interpreter because one, child interpreters don't know exactly every single word, so you're getting unreliable interpretation. And two, a lot of times that can be um, pretty sensitive information, especially anything regarding medical or financial concerns. So, in order to avoid all of that, just please be mindful about what you're asking the child to interpret. I wouldn't say you wouldn't to not have a child help out with it, but to be mindful that it not be anything too sensitive. Another really big thing is being patient. Allow time between um, answers and questions. Because a lot of times it's just the client is processing what is happening at the moment. So just try learning to be comfortable in those extended pauses. Another really big thing we ask all our volunteers to do is get creative. So that can be drawing pictures, using a Pictionary, Pictionary, picture um, dictionary, or using a lot of these digital resources that are now available to us. That could be Google Translate. but that app doesn't usually have a whole bunch of languages. So I would steer more to using Termingly, which is this relatively new app that uses real-time interpretation instead of a program. And they also have more languages available on this app. It is currently free. I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but it is free for any volunteers who are working with refugee resettlement agencies. We also have Microsoft Interpreter, which is free. I usually use this to send a text message to a client, so that's a great way to communicate using the phone. And some platinum rules. These are things I really want you to keep in mind with working with our clients. The number one big thing is that we never ask our clients about their story. This is just because a lot of times when you ask them, they feel obligated to tell you, and we don't want that to happen. And another big part of that is telling the story can be re-traumatizing. So we ask that you do not ask at all about this situation. Just trust um, that they are here for a reason and that they cannot go home for a reason. If it is offered to you, which it can happen, I've had situations where I've walked into a client's home and within a couple of minutes, the client discloses a little bit about their story. What I would do in that situation is just handle with the utmost care. Of course, it depends on the person, but what I like to do is I like to ground the client, saying, "Hey, the good thing is that you're in your new apartment and you are safe here." So I'm just trying to get them back into the present moment. I've already talked about religion before, but I'll say it again. We do not spread our own religion. It is okay to be curious. So if the client asks you questions about it, feel free to answer, but we just ask that you do not preach it. And then with dress and culture, especially with walking inside their homes, I like to take off my shoes. Even though they'll tell me to not take them off, I will still see the shoes on right there at the entryway. So out of courtesy and wanting to respect their home, I take off my shoes, so I make sure I have matching socks and some quick and easy slip-on shoes. Another really big thing I do when I'm walking into a client's home is um, making sure that I'm appropriately dressed. I make sure I wear my pants and a cardigan. This is all, of course, according to the season. I would just ask that you dress appropriately modest when walking into their home. And reporting, this is a really big one. So volunteers are mandated reporters. So we ask that all volunteers report any financial hardships, safety concerns, any big life change, any health or mental health concerns, or any abuse or neglect. That's really important. It's not your job to investigate it. It's enough with the suspicion. So what will happen in that situation is that you report it to me, which I will report to a supervisor, who will then make the report to the reporting agency. And we let that agency do the investigation. That's when they get involved to actually investigate. If it gives you any comfort, I have not had that come up in my time as the community engagement specialist. But like I said, this is also very important to report. We already kind of went through this. I'll state it again because it is very important. Please be mindful of any sensitive identifying information with clients, especially health or financial. And when in doubt, just ask them if you can share them their general story. Just always alter name, country origin, or any identifying details. And preventing burnout is really, really important because we want to keep you as volunteers as long as we can. So it's setting those appropriate boundaries. I'll say it again. It's good for you and it's good for the client. Um, so just being very clear about them and establishing them from the beginning. Another really big thing is setting realistic expectations. So this means talking to the client about your role as a volunteer. I will also be doing this with the client as well to let them know that you are coming in as a volunteer, that you are not being paid by Inspiritus, that you are volunteering your time, and that any major issues always has to go to Inspiritus staff, um, and that volunteers typically help out with the cultural aspect of things and English. So I will make sure that the client knows that, but please do it on your own as well, um, just so that the client fully understands that scope. Also mentioning to the client that there will be an end to this role and to establish that realistic ending. Also, this setting these boundaries and setting these realistic expectations does help prevent burnout. Um, it helps out so much because by that way, you've already setting up like the realistic role of being a volunteer. And that way you're able to continue volunteering with us, which we would love to have you. I would also check in with yourself about what burnout looks out for you. For me personally, burnout is when I'm going to sleep thinking about something that has to be done or a certain client story. If that does happen and you're seeing those signs of burnout, I encourage you to take a minute to do something that you want to do that nourishes your soul. For me, it's books and, and plants. For you, it can be taking a walk, being with your dog. Um, and if you need to, you could take a week off from the volunteer role and continue, and then from then continue. So just making sure you're checking in with yourself to prevent that as much as possible. And some next steps. Register on Better Impact, which if you've already done the volunteer application, that is registering for Better Impact. It is the same link. Better Impact is used to report all of the volunteer hours. I'll go into that in a bit later. Please make sure to donate for that background check. This is important just because we want to make sure that everything is clear and safe for our clients, and attend this volunteer training. If you're looking to form a co-sponsorship group, this is a group of people who come together to walk alongside a family. If you're interested in that, you can let me or Sarah know. And if you're interested in donating any furniture, please feel free to go to welcomecoop.org. They do accept gently used furniture that does not have, where the furniture did not have a cat or dog living in the household. And you can also reach out to me if you're interested in donating something specific. The value of volunteer hours and miles. So right now, every volunteer hour is valued at $31. This is great. Miles are valued at about 68 cents a mile. And it's really important to report all of this because we're part of matching grant, which doubles all the volunteer contributions with funds from the Office of Refugee Resettlement. This is for direct financial assistance for our newly arrived refugees. So this is a really cool program and another way that every volunteer hour is super important. And donating, we're always needing some strollers, microwaves, washers and dryers, or bikes. This all can be gently left. And for all of that, you can also email me or Sarah about that. We also have our Hope Tree every year. This is in December, where we give each client that comes in a new coat. So last year we did about like 400 coats. So if you're looking to donate a new coat, please reach out to me for Hope Tree, and we'll be happy to assist with that. Um, Another really big thing that we do is we have our clothing closet in Clarkston at Rock of Ages. This is where we accept gently used clothing of all ages. And if you're interested in doing that, you can email Cheryl Bob. Right there, her email is cheryl.bob@weinspirit.org. And going back to reporting those hours. So like I said, when you do the volunteer application, you are registering for Better Impact. And so it will look like this on the screen. What you will do here is you will go to hours, you report the hours you volunteered, the miles you drove, what you did, and also if you donated anything to that family, please make a note of that as well. We also record that. This is really important just so that I know what's going on and if you need any extra support from community engagement. All right, this is the end of the presentation. If you have any questions besides this, please reach out to our community engagement team. Thank you so much.